What occurs when someone continuously tells you that you're insane? At first, you reject the idea. You know who you are, and you trust your own mind. But gradually, something changes. You begin to wonder, could you really be difficult? Could you be overreacting? Maybe you're not as logical as you believed. And if enough uncertainty slips in, you may start to accept the one possibility you never imagined. What if they're right? This is gaslighting, a psychological tactic designed to make you question your reality. It's more than lying. It's the act of erasing the truth entirely and replacing it with whatever suits the manipulator. The most terrifying aspect? By the time you recognize what's happening, if you ever do, you're already caught. The term originates from the 1944 movie Gaslight, in which a husband gradually convinces his wife she's losing her mind. He dims the lights in their home, then denies anything has changed when she points it out. His aim is to make her distrust herself so deeply that she becomes reliant on him. But this isn't just fiction. It's a real tactic used in toxic relationships, cults, politics, and even businesses. Gaslighting is effective because it dismantles your grip on reality itself. It begins subtly. The manipulator denies things they've clearly said or done, even with evidence. "I never said that," or "you're imagining things." Initially, you push back. But hearing the same lies repeatedly chips away at your self-confidence. Then, they start attacking your thinking. "You're so dramatic," or "you overanalyze everything." Eventually, you begin to doubt your own judgment, wondering if you're really the issue. Next comes emotional invalidation. Any emotional reaction you have is dismissed. "Why are you so sensitive?" or "You always blow things out of proportion." The aim is to make you question whether your feelings are even valid. Before long, you start apologizing for how you feel, feelings that never needed apology. Then comes the final blow: isolation. Gaslighters don't want others influencing you. So, they gradually remove outside perspectives, telling you your friends are making you paranoid, or your family just doesn't understand you. Little by little, they become your only authority on reality. By this point, they no longer need to actively manipulate you. You do it yourself. You stop questioning. You silence your doubts before they can even arise. You begin to accept their version of events, not because you believe it, but because your mind no longer trusts itself to disagree. Gaslighting is terrifying because it doesn't just tamper with your thoughts. It rewrites your identity. It makes you abandon your true self and hand over control without realizing it. And when you finally see what's been done, if you ever do, it feels almost impossible to break free. How do you fight back when you don't even know what's real anymore? Brainwashing. Today, we see countless individuals so brainwashed that they seem completely detached from reality. They accept the unbelievable, defend the indefensible, and reject the clearest truths. But how do people reach this state? What exactly is brainwashing? And how does such extreme transformation happen? Brainwashing isn't just a plot device in dystopian stories. It's one of history's most powerful forms of psychological manipulation. And the scariest truth? No one is completely immune. A haunting real-life example is the Jonestown Massacre of 1978, where over 900 people, including children, died after drinking cyanide-laced punch, following the orders of cult leader Jim Jones. These weren't people who blindly followed a madman. They were systematically conditioned until they lost the ability to think critically. They genuinely believed they were making their own choices. That's the terrifying power of brainwashing. It doesn't force you to change. It makes you want to. So, how does brainwashing work? It typically follows a four-step process: isolation, destabilization, indoctrination, and reinforcement. It's so effective that, once it takes root, escape feels nearly impossible. The first step is isolation. When you limit the information someone receives, you control how they view reality. Jim Jones achieved this by moving his followers to a remote location in Guyana, cutting off all external contact. In daily life, this happens through media bubbles, extremist groups, or toxic relationships where only one viewpoint is allowed. The more one's reality is shaped by a single voice, the less they question it. Next is destabilization, breaking down mental resistance using exhaustion, fear, and confusion. Cults employ endless sermons, unpredictable punishments, and emotional breakdowns. Governments might use constant crises, making people feel too overwhelmed to understand the world without official guidance. The more mentally fatigued a person becomes, the more they rely on the manipulator to make sense of things. Then comes indoctrination, the planting of new beliefs. The key is conditioning through reward and punishment. Conform? You're praised. Question? You're punished. In cults, doubt equals exile. In real life, questioning certain ideas might lead to social rejection. Eventually, the brain adapts. These new beliefs start to feel natural, even if they were forced. Finally, there's reinforcement. Once the brainwashing is complete, the new identity is constantly affirmed through rituals, groupthink, and identity-based loyalty. People stop questioning because these beliefs are now part of who they are. They don't feel brainwashed. They feel enlightened. And that's the most dangerous part. Brainwashing doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like truth. This is why people stay in abusive systems, fall for mass manipulation, or commit to extreme ideologies without ever questioning them. So, how can you protect yourself? First, awareness. Brainwashing works by making critical thinking seem unnecessary, or even threatening. The moment you're told not to question something, that's your red flag. Second, exposure to diverse perspectives. If you're only ever shown one side of a story, you're being controlled, often without even knowing it. Third, recognize emotional manipulation. Fear, guilt, outrage. These are tools meant to override reason. Anytime your emotions are being used to shape your beliefs, stop and ask, who benefits from me thinking this way? Because once your mind is rewritten, you won't even realize it's happened. Guilt tripping. There's a way to control someone without force, without threats, without a single raised voice. You don't have to argue, persuade, or command. All you have to do is make them feel guilty. Guilt tripping and shame inducement are some of the most powerful psychological weapons, capable of turning people into puppets without them ever realizing it. The victim believes they're acting out of free will, when in reality, their emotions are being manipulated like strings on a marionette. Think about it. How many times have you done something not because you wanted to, but because you felt bad if you didn't? Maybe you agreed to a favor, even though you were exhausted. Maybe you apologized for something that wasn't your fault. Maybe you stayed in a toxic relationship because leaving would make you feel like a terrible person. That's guilt tripping in action, and it's terrifyingly effective. The trick is simple. First, the manipulator plants the seed of guilt, subtly twisting reality to make the victim feel responsible for their suffering. A parent sighs, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." A friend says, "I guess I just don't matter to you anymore." A partner says, "I sacrificed so much for this relationship and you're just going to walk away?" None of these statements directly tell the victim what to do. They don't have to. The guilt does all the work. But guilt alone isn't always enough. That's where shame inducement comes in. Guilt makes you feel bad about something you did. Shame makes you feel bad about who you are. It's not, "You forgot my birthday." It's, "You're a terrible friend." It's not, "You made a mistake at work." It's, "You're completely incompetent." When someone internalizes shame, they stop fighting back. They don't just feel like they did something wrong. They feel like they are wrong. And that is the ultimate form of control. Cult leaders, abusive partners, manipulative bosses. They all use this tactic to break people down, to make them easier to control. If you can convince someone that they are inherently flawed, that they owe you something, that they are never quite good enough. Then they will spend their lives trying to prove otherwise. They will stay in situations they should leave, agree to things they don't want, and chase approval that will never truly be given. But here's the scariest part. Guilt tripping doesn't just come from other people. We learn to do it to ourselves. We hear these voices so often that they become part of our own inner dialogue. I shouldn't say no. I should be a better person. I don't deserve to be happy. And once someone starts shaming themselves, the manipulation is complete. They no longer need anyone else to control them. So how do you break free? The first step is recognizing the pattern. Ask yourself, are you doing something because you truly want to, or because you're afraid of being seen as selfish, ungrateful, or a disappointment? Are you accepting blame that isn't yours? Are you constantly trying to earn approval that keeps moving just out of reach? Once you start questioning the guilt, you strip it of its power. Because the truth is, no one else gets to decide your worth. And the moment you stop playing their game, the spell is broken. Love bombing. In the beginning, it feels like something out of a movie. Love bombing. The attention is intoxicating. The affection is overwhelming. You finally found someone who sees you, really sees you. They flood you with compliments, send constant texts, tell you you're special, that they've never met anyone like you. It's intense, exhilarating, almost too perfect. And that's because it is. This is love bombing, a psychological trick designed to make someone emotionally dependent before pulling the rug out from under them. It's not about genuine affection. It's a setup, a carefully crafted illusion. Love bombing works by hijacking the brain's reward system. When someone floods you with extreme positivity, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in addiction. It's a high, an emotional rush that feels impossible to walk away from. And that's exactly the point. In relationships, it might look like extravagant gifts, rushing intimacy, or intense declarations of love after only a few days. In friendships or workplaces, it's an instant connection, relentless praise and flattery that feels almost surreal. But the real trick isn't in the excess, it's in the reversal. Because once the victim is hooked, the withdrawal begins. The good morning texts stop. The warmth fades. The compliments turn into cold indifference, or worse, criticism. Suddenly, the person who made you feel like the most special person in the world pulls away, leaving you scrambling to understand what went wrong. And here's where the real manipulation happens. Instead of recognizing the pattern, the victim blames themselves. They analyze every conversation, lower their boundaries, and work harder to fix what they think they did wrong. They chase the affection, not realizing that the honeymoon phase was never real to begin with. This cycle, intense affection followed by sudden emotional starvation, is a psychological trap. It's called intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. The victim never knows when the affection will return, so they keep chasing it, tolerating worse and worse treatment just for another hit of that early euphoria. It's a tactic used by narcissists in relationships, by cult leaders to keep followers obedient, even by toxic workplaces to manipulate employees into loyalty. The unpredictability creates an emotional roller coaster where the victim is so focused on regaining the high that they don't realize how much control they've lost. By the time they see the pattern, it's already too late. They're exhausted, isolated, doubting their own instincts. Learned helplessness. In 1973, Patty Hearst, a wealthy young woman, was kidnapped by the militant group Symbionese Liberation Army. At first, she resisted. She was beaten, locked in a dark closet, and kept in isolation for weeks. But then, something chilling occurred. Months later, she was seen brandishing a gun, robbing a bank alongside her captors. The world was stunned. How does a victim transform into an accomplice? This was no simple hostage situation. It was a textbook case of psychological collapse. It starts with breaking a person down. When someone is subjected to relentless punishment, failure, or isolation, their mind begins to adapt in troubling ways. Eventually, they stop seeing escape as an option. Even when the way out is open, they don't flee. This phenomenon isn't just theoretical. Psychologists first identified it through experiments with dogs. Placed in cages with electrified floors, the dogs initially tried to escape. But after repeated shocks and no escape, they gave up. And when the cage doors were finally opened, they didn't leave. They had learned helplessness. This is the same mechanism that causes manipulated victims to stay, even when freedom is possible. But how does it unfold? It starts with unpredictable treatment. Reward one day, punishment the next. The victim never knows what to expect, and their mind stays locked in survival mode, too worn down to resist. Then comes self-doubt. The manipulator attacks their confidence, calling them weak, stupid, and incapable. Over time, their self-worth crumbles. Next is isolation. Friends, family, outside perspectives, gone. With no reminders of who they once were, their world shrinks. The manipulator becomes their sole influence. Eventually, forced dependence sets in. The victim relies on their abuser for food, shelter, and emotional connection. By then, they don't just accept captivity. They may defend it, just like Patty Hearst. They don't merely stay. They actively support their own entrapment. This is why people remain in abusive relationships. Why prisoners of war form emotional attachments to their captors. Why members of high-control groups remain obedient. It's not stupidity. It's not weakness. It's survival. The brain prioritizes safety over freedom. And when someone is trained to believe escape is impossible, they won't even try. That's what makes learned helplessness so frightening. The most devastating thing a manipulator steals isn't a person's freedom. It's their belief that freedom was ever an option. Cultivating dependence. There's a reason cult leaders, abusive partners, and authoritarian regimes rarely rely on physical chains. They simply don't need them. The most powerful form of control doesn't come from locking someone up. It comes from making them believe they can't survive without you. This is the dark art of engineered dependence, a psychological tactic that convinces people to surrender their independence voluntarily, placing their trust and autonomy in someone else's hands. It works because it taps into a deeply rooted human need: connection. It begins subtly, by removing options one by one, not through force, but through careful manipulation. A partner claims your friends don't truly care about you. A group insists your family is toxic and must be cut off. A leader murmurs that only they hold the truth, warning that the outside world is dangerous. At first, it sounds like a suggestion, but soon it becomes a rule. Then it evolves into a belief. Until one day, you glance around and realize there's no one left. Once isolation is complete, dependence sets in. The manipulator becomes the sole source of validation, approval, security, even the most basic necessities. They create problems only they can fix. They ration affection until obedience is assured. In extreme scenarios, they control finances, decisions, and even movement. Victims stop making choices, not because they don't want to, but because they've been trained to believe they can't. And here's the cruelest part. The victim thinks it's their own choice. They aren't physically locked away. They aren't restrained. Yet they stay, because their entire reality has been reshaped so thoroughly that leaving feels like jumping off a cliff. This method has been used across history. Cults isolate members from loved ones, ensuring the leader becomes the only source of truth. Abusive partners erode self-worth until their victims believe they're worthless without them. Totalitarian regimes censor information, making citizens feel helpless without the system that dominates them. And when a person has been broken like this, they don't need to be forced to stay. They'll choose to, even when an escape route is clear. Even when the doors are wide open, they hesitate. Because once your sense of identity has been molded around another's control, freedom doesn't feel safe. It feels like a threat.